Hey folks, Nick here from Another BookTube channel, and today I'm reviewing The Beast You Are, Stories by Paul Tremblay. This is the newest release from Tremblay. He's one of my favorite horror authors working today. I was not a huge fan of his last book, The Pallbearers Club. It was the first book of his that just didn't work for me at all. So I was hoping things would get back on track with The Beast You Are. And this is a short story collection. So as things are with pretty much any short story collection, things are going to be hit and miss. Some stories you will connect with more than others. That was certainly the case for me, but there was a lot of really good stuff in here, and overall, I'm really satisfied with it. Since it's short stories, there's no single plot synopsis I can give, so I'll just run through some of the stories that I particularly connected with or found interesting. What I will say about all of these stories is that they feel very experimental. They feel like Tremblay trying weird, different things. And he does something that I love when authors do for short story collections. In the back, he puts story notes where he just talks a little bit about the story and maybe how it came to fruition, where the idea came from, or what it was originally written for. A lot of the things in here were written for specific anthologies or magazines that had a certain theme about them, or he was trying to emulate a certain writer in some way. And so having that context makes some of the stories make a little bit more sense, because just reading them straight through, you'd be like, what was this? Like, why is there a random comic book pitch in here? That's kind of weird. I don't know. So I highly recommend, if you do read this, reading it with the story notes. A lot of very, really experimental stuff in here. And just like his novels, every story is imbued with a sense of ambiguity. That's like the trademark of Paul Tremblay, is that nothing is as it seems. Nothing should be taken at face value. I think he's very much a writer who is interested in how things can make an audience member feel. It kind of reminds me of a David Lynch type of creator, where a movie like Eraserhead, you can tell what everything is. It's just that how everything interacts with each other and what it ultimately means is open to your individual interpretation. And I think that's very much the case with Tremblay's stories, particularly in this book here, which is going to lead some people to feeling more of a connection than others. There are some stories in here that I didn't connect with. There's one story that isn't necessarily bad, but it's called House of Windows, which it's certainly an interesting story, but I didn't form a connection to it. I wasn't able to get anything out of that one, or something like The Large Man or The Dead Thing. Those are, again, well written. I just didn't connect with them. There's other stories though that really spoke to me. They really sang. I think one of the best, not just in this book, but maybe one of the best things that Tremblay's ever written, is a story called I Know You're There, which is, it's a tough one. It is about a man who is grieving for his husband that very suddenly passed away unexpectedly. And the entire story is about grief, what it does to you, what it does to your memories, what it does to your mental state, and how you can feel haunted by grief. It's a beautiful story. I think it's really, really well done, and it's the perfect amount of ambiguity. It's the perfect amount of context. I think it absolutely sings. And if nothing else, if that's a story you read from here, I think you're going to be really, really satisfied. That's a 10 out of 10 story, in my opinion. There's another one that, again, it felt very experimental, called The Last Conversation, which is told in second-person perspective, which is always a risk. So it's you. And in the story, you are waking up and you don't know kind of where you are or what's happened to you, but you're very weak. You can't see anything. Having trouble to walk, but there's somebody who is watching over you, and they're kind of like rehabilitating you, trying to get you back to operational health as a person. And as the story goes on, it's told like a daily like journal situation. You learn more about how you ended up where you are, what the state of the world is in around you, and the secrets as to how you got where you are. It's really interesting. It's another one that deals, I think, with grief, and in a really interesting, different way that I've never seen before. If you are a fan of Tremblay's Head Full of Ghosts, which I think we all are because it's such a great book, he does go back to that well a couple times. Well, not really. I shouldn't phrase it like that because I think that has a negative connotation. But he does revisit Head Full of Ghosts in a minor way with a story called Postal Zone, which was something he did for Fangoria magazine, as he explains, where the journalist from A Head Full of Ghosts, I think Karen Brissett is her name, answers like fan letters for the magazine, but in character, like about what happened in Head Full of Ghosts. So it's like a meta thing. It's pretty good. It's not my favorite. Just interesting to revisit that world. He also goes back to Mary and Marjorie again in a story called Red Eyes. In Growing Things, his previous short story collection, I'll go further back. In Head Full of Ghosts, it's established that Marjorie will tell Mary stories, and she'll include them as characters in it. So in Growing Things, there was a story that Marjorie would have told Mary in there. That's also in here as a story called Red Eyes. It's like a monster story. It's pretty good. Again, didn't blow me away, but pretty good. Solid monster story. The biggest Mary Marjorie connection, they get the animal treatment in the titular story, The Beast You Are. This is about a 340-page book. Over 100 pages of that is this one story. It's the only original story in the collection. Like, it was written for this book. Everything else appeared in other publications first. But the Beast You Are story is kind of like if Shirley Jackson wrote Watership Down. It's anthropomorphic characters who have like the lottery situation on their hands, but it's in a society that kind of mirrors ours a bit. Like there's mention of like QR codes, libraries, phones, like etc. Like it's a real world. The animals aren't walking on all fours. They are human-like. They just happen to be animals. It's an interesting story. It's told in free verse, not prose, which I think actually helps it. It helps its readability a bit. I had a little bit of trouble connecting to it. It wasn't my favorite, but it was certainly interesting. Again, really get the sense Tremblay's experimenting with a lot here. Some of them pay off, some of them maybe not so much. Your mileage is going to vary, but like I said, there's a lot of really good stuff in here. I would say my arbitrary and subjective grade for The Beast You Are stories by Paul Tremblay is like 7 out of 10. Some stories are 10 out of 10, some of them maybe like 5 out of 10. There's nothing really bad in here. It's just going to be a matter of your own personal connection. So that's that. Let me know if you read this, what your favorite stories from it were, which ones didn't work for you as much. Let me know in the comments. Thank you for spending some time with me today, but now it's time to get back to reading.